For just over a year now, I've been using these Virtual-Fly products you see before me. Now that I have amassed some hours on them, and after a year as my exclusive controls, how do these products feel? Do I notice a difference in quality from when they were new? How did they change the way I sim? These answers and more to come in this Virtual-Fly review. What's up guys, Death Donkey back, and we have before us the Yoko Plus, TQ6 Plus, RUDDO Plus, and Verneo from Virtual-Fly. And as the intro said, I used these products exclusively for about a year across multiple simulators. Technically, I've had them longer, but I also got a Virtual setup recently. Subscribe so you don't miss that review and more. But this last month to month and a half, the usage of the Virtual-Fly products hasn't been so exclusive, but I digress. I still used them for an entire year and still use them heavily, I might add, especially when it comes to anything GA or airliner related, which is like 98% of my flying. And the rudder pedals are used for damn near every flight I do, and that includes like space sims too. Going back about a year ago, I got to upgrade from my Honeycomb, Yoke, and Satec rudder pedals and throttle quadrant to the Virtual-Fly products here, and I couldn't have been more excited. I got them out of the boxes and hooked them up, and before I was even in a sim, I noticed just the fluidity of motion in each of the products was different than anything I had used prior. Everything moved so smoothly and freely, and nothing bound up at all when you put things through their range of motion. It was expected, but an absolute relief to finally feel it for the first time. Eager to get into a sim and fly, I loaded up for my first flight and went to reach for the starter that I had on the Honeycomb out of habit and realized I don't have my buttons anymore. For a split second, I almost felt lost. I grabbed my keyboard, set it on top of the Yoke, which was perfect size for a 10 keyless, I might add, and resorted to the old-fashioned keyboard commands that I remembered from a decade ago of flight simming. I got it started, and as soon as I rolled the throttles up to taxi, I forgot about the buttons and was absolutely blown away by the feeling and accuracy in the maneuvers I was able to achieve literally on the first flight. Flying was a completely different endeavor from then on, and now, more than ever, the feeling I got flight simming more closely represented the real-world experience I have. That said, over a year later now, has the feeling of the Yoko Plus or any other Virtual-Fly product like the RUDDO Plus pedals or throttles changed at all? Is the accuracy still the same? Most reviews seem to be when they just got the products, but I have conservatively put 300 hours on these products in that year of exclusive use. I say conservatively because that number is realistically probably closer to the 400 or 500 hour mark, but I just recently started logging flight simulator time like a nerd in 4Flight, so I can't definitively prove those numbers to you guys, but no, for a while I was producing videos almost full time for the best flight sim news site out there, and I can assure you that name does not start with a T. I'd get off of work and come home to fly with these Virtual-Fly products. Most weekends then were spent flying using these products till the wee hours of the mornings, and a 10 to 12 hour day of flying on the weekend, both Saturday and Sunday, either for a video or with friends just flying or any combination thereof, was not out of the realm of possible scenarios for these Virtual-Fly products. Sure, some of the hours were spent commercial flying, where once at altitude you're basically on an autopilot where control inputs aren't really required, but even on those flights, I still found myself 1 year later keeping myself from putting the autopilot on because the enjoyment of hand flying the takeoff and climb out was actually worth feeling and rewarding enough to do. Same with descent. Once I hit top of descent, I found myself disengaging the autopilot to hand fly all the way down to approach and landing. The landing with the Yoko Plus, even a year later, is a superb and realistic feeling. You see, I expected somewhat of a break-in, if you will, of the bungee cords in the Yoko Plus at least. I thought maybe the tension would relax a bit that was felt from the bungee cords inside, but so far, I have not experienced that, at least not to the point I can discernibly feel it. It still almost takes two hands to reach the full range of travel. Matter of fact, even the fluidity in the movement is still the exact same smooth feeling as it was out of the box a little over a year and approximately 300 plus hours ago. Even the pitch trim switch, something so minor, yet probably the most used button in any cockpit, and certainly the most used button for me at least on this yoke, aside from maybe the hat switch, feels just as tactile and just as clicky as it did the day I pulled it out of the box. That goes for all the buttons on the Yoko Plus, including the hat switch too. Though some are used more than others, the point here is that they haven't changed in feeling from when they were brand new. I've had joysticks in the past whose buttons would get sticky for no reason, or actuating an axis would develop a squeak over time, but with these Virtual-Fly products, that has not at all been the case. They have stood up well to the time, testing, and abuse I have put them through, and it's only the beginning. Even the RUDDO Plus rudder pedals, which experience and require the most force during inputs and while in flight, have not changed in how they feel, operate, sound, anything. Though because the mechanism is more open than say the Yoko Plus, I have had to clean them with a simple rag and maybe some air duster every now and again, but that's the basics in taking care of your things, right? They tend to see the most dirt and such, given most of the time you have something on your feet like shoes or slippers when using these, and they reside on the floor or close to it generally in say a cockpit, so a cleaning occasionally definitely didn't hurt matters. The load cells in the toe brakes make them by far the best feeling toe brakes you can get in any similarly priced competitor's units, by far beating any spring-loaded mechanisms. The amount of force you use to operate these pedals, if you will, is like the force I had to use in the real world operating a real aircraft. This allows a true pressure input, which is commonly how flying an aircraft is described in the real world. You never want to yank on a control input unless in specific situations. Instead, you want to apply a pressure to the control input, and the same is true with these controls from Virtual-Fly. In the real world, the control inputs are described as having unlimited resolution, which is how a pilot can fly so accurately. Every minute pressure change on a real aircraft's controls has an effect. With these Virtual-Fly controls, though not unlimited resolution like in the real world, they have enough resolution in their inputs using Hall sensors that the minute changes in pressures are registered, and the resolution is high enough that I, in a year of use across pretty much every flight sim and situation you can think of, have not found a situation where the resolution wasn't enough or that I was asking for more from these Virtual-Fly products. I can actually demonstrate this using P3D and the FSUIPC utility. For this demonstration, codenamed Resolution Matters, I'm going to use the Honeycomb Alpha Yoke and the Virtual-Fly YOKO Plus Yoke. The numbers that matter here are in the box labeled in. This is the raw input, something like your sim would receive, though other variables like slopes or sensitivities will alter how the raw input is interpreted by your simulator. We can still confidently use this raw number, if you will, to show a clear difference in control input resolutions, and it's easiest for me to use this utility to show that value. The delta box and out box are not relevant for this demonstration. Looking at the in value again, if I very slowly move these controls, we can see as I move the honeycomb on the left, Yoko Plus on the right, we have very clear steps or stops in the numbers as I move the honeycomb, but in the Yoko Plus, the numbers almost never settle. Now, in a sim using the same linear input settings for both yokes, if we focus on the yoke, we can actually see these values in action as you manipulate the controls in sim. See how if I very slowly move the honeycomb, you can see each step, if you will, in its input. The yoke snaps in very small increments to the next position, even though I'm doing a steady increase in the input of the honeycomb. If I do the same with the Yoko Plus, You can't see the yoke snap to any position. It's one smooth motion all the way through. Now that we have that out of the way, we can move on from these superb YOKO Plus and RUDDO Plus units over to the TQ6 Plus throttle quadrant. I was specifically keen to know how well the friction mechanism would hold up to time, and I am happy to report that it, so far at least, has held up well. If you just walked up to this throttle, you wouldn't be able to tell I even used its friction lock much. It does not feel worn out at all, and I have not had to constantly adjust it. Once you set it, it stays, and I do kind of like a somewhat tighter throttle motion, so the fact this hasn't worn to the point I can feel it yet is probably a testament to the build quality Virtual-Fly has achieved here. I only have to give it a little turn to lock my throttles and/or mixture and prop levers, and its motion is still as smooth as the day I pulled it out of the box. Are you sensing a pattern yet? What I abundantly love about this throttle is that it has enough accuracy and range of motion to be absolutely precise in your settings. Gone are the days of compromise to your takeoff power, mixture leaning, or prop settings. You can set with confidence all of those to the book numbers, if need be. We certainly can't forget about the Verneo throttle quadrant. As with the TQ6 Plus throttle, I like the Verneo to have some resistance to it when moving the axes. The way this is achieved is through a little set screw right here on the bottom of each lever. One would think that this, over time, would potentially dig into the shafts of the levers, but as you can see, there are no grooves in the steel at all. Now, this unit is not the Plus counterpart, so the twisting doesn't actually bring the levers in or out, and there are no push buttons to use to move the prop and mixture levers, but it does still use Hall sensors like the other products in this video, and these levers can still be twisted. In fact, that's often the method I use to dial in power and fuel settings. The Verneo, like the TQ6 Plus, is also a throttle unit that allows absolute precision in your power settings. Whether you're flying around in a Cessna on Microsoft Flight Sim, to your favorite Jumbo on P3D, and even to the classic jet you hold near and dear to your heart, these throttle units, and their YOKO Plus and RUDDO Plus units, will do nothing less than impress you every time your hands or feet are on them. I have no doubts these are the last components for your sim you'll ever need to buy. Sure, the expense of a setup like this could be somewhat of a hard pill to swallow at first, but these are built to last for years and tens of thousands of hours. If this year of use wasn't quite enough for you, I had a friend find a YOKO Plus unit on eBay through nothing but sheer luck. It just so happened to be the only Virtual-Fly product at the time on there, and long story short, he won. And when this thing arrived, it was very clear it was heavily used. We had suspicion that this unit was in some form of cockpit, as it was sold as is and came with no mounting hardware. Evidence on the shell suggests it was slid into a slot fit to it. The unit itself was clean, but switch covers were missing, and more jarringly, the unit had some serious issues in that the yoke would wiggle from side to side, like all the way through the shaft. I unfortunately didn't get footage of this because the main concern was fixing it, and the idea for this video came after, but under further investigation, 4 screws under the hood had worn down the alloy inside the unit, causing the play I mentioned earlier. We tightened these screws down, putting a washer under them, and the play was gone. It was with this evidence as well that we felt even more so now that this unit more than likely resided in what was probably a motion sim. We could not come up with a scenario where such a side load would be applied to the yoke unless, say, someone was using it to hold themselves up in a tight bank or other maneuver. I'd be curious what you guys think this yoke's previous life was in the comments section, given the evidence we found. It should be known before you comment below, the eBay seller clearly had no clue what it was. It was a generic description, starting bid of like $100 US, and everything else the guy was selling was only related in that they were electronics. He had no other flight sim stuff. But even this unit, now that everything was tightened back up, works identically to the unit that is only a year old. Switches still feel tactile and have a nice click to them, and even the bungee cords still don't feel worn out. It literally feels the same. And that should be a testament to what you are investing in. It's almost like Virtual-Fly tried to make the best product they could. And that is a lot more than I can say about other companies. Now, not everything has been rainbows and butterflies, and my only complaint on these controls in this year of use actually isn't even a part of the controls themselves, but the foam they use on the mounts. It does not seem to hold up too well to repeated on the desk and off the desk use. I think a piece of rubber over the chosen foam would have been better for the repeated use cases. The Virtual-Fly controls themselves, though, are without a doubt super high quality, all things considered. The accuracy, feeling in the axis motions, and evidence that longevity was a part of the process design means these are, without a doubt, the last yoke, rudder pedals, or throttle quadrants you'll ever need to buy. These controls changed how I sim for the better, and it would honestly be hard going back to anything else. If you guys enjoyed this video, please consider joining the Chat Nation Discord server linked in the video description. I would love to do a flight with you guys. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the notification bell for more content, and as always, this was Death. Thanks for watching, and until next time.